The year is the 9th and the date is September 8th. Heavy rain pours down over a dense forest somewhere in the ancient lands of present-day Germany. 3 Roman legions march along the narrow path of the forest, dressed in their well-prepared armor. Heavy armor makes their march on the narrow and muddy terrain very difficult, leaving their flanks vulnerable. Suddenly, without warning, hundreds of tribal warriors armed with light swords, spears, and arrows emerge from behind the trees and hills. A decisive battle begins that will change the course of history. At the dawn of the 1st century AD, the Roman Empire was at the height of its power, with Emperor Augustus at its head. He had a vision of a vast empire that would stretch across the known world. His goals for expansion were extremely ambitious. He sought to secure Rome's borders and extend its power over new territories. For Augustus, only the sky was the limit as he sought to place the entire world under Roman rule. He expanded the empire's borders along the Nile, securing access to Egypt's rich resources, along the Danube, which marked the northern border, and to the Pyrenees, conquering the strategically important Iberian Peninsula. These territories remained under Roman control for centuries. One region, however, remained unreachable for the great emperor: Germany. The Romans had long been captivated by Germany's riches, including its fertile lands and strategic trade routes, and Augustus was determined to incorporate it into the Roman Empire. Publius Quinctilius Varus, a trusted Roman general known for his administrative skills, was charged with this mission. Varus was confident in Rome's military might and believed that might makes right. To him, the Germanic tribes were simply unorganized barbarians who would easily submit to Roman discipline and force. But what Varus does not suspect is that the Germanic tribes have quite different plans. They, especially the Cherusci, were not at all the primitive barbarians the Romans thought them to be. They were a collection of fierce warriors inhabiting the harsh landscapes of Germany. Unlike Gaul, where the Romans subdued the tribes with bribes and brute force, it was quite different in Germany. Its forests were dense, its rivers untamed, and its inhabitants as fierce as the land itself. They did not write their laws on scrolls. Instead, they lived in small villages ruled by chieftains who earned their respect through courage and wisdom. Freedom was their highest value, so sacred that trying to subdue them was like trying to hold smoke in your hands. They were unlike any other people the Romans had ever encountered. Prominent among them was a leader named Arminius, a man who would change the course of history. Arminius was trained in Roman military tactics and even served as a Roman knight. This unique training gave him an advantage that would prove fatal to the Romans. Rome would soon realize that their biggest mistake had been to underestimate the Germanic tribes. They were masters of guerrilla warfare long before the term came into use. They did not fight for wealth or glory, but for survival. There was a saying among the tribes, "Better a grave in the forest than chains in Rome." Moreover, their leader Arminius was not just a leader, but a brilliant strategist who understood that the best defense is a good offense. He was preparing a surprise that would shake the foundations of the Roman Empire. As mentioned earlier, Arminius was trained in Roman military tactics and had even served as a Roman knight. What we didn't mention, however, is that he often served as a messenger between the Romans and the Germanic tribes. In this position, he was able to gain the trust of the tribal leaders for his rebellion. Arminius decides to inform Varus of an alleged rebellion in the lands of the Bructeri, located in northwestern Germany. Despite warnings from the rival chief Segestes about possible treason by Arminius, Varus accepts the report as credible. He begins to call his legions from their defensive posts to march to the frontier. From his base near the Weser River, probably near the present-day German town of Minden, Varus quickly headed west, building roads as he went. On the first day of the campaign, Arminius and his co-conspirators asked permission to leave the army to rally the German allies of Rome. Varus agreed on a decision that would prove disastrous. As the Roman column stretched for several miles, it became increasingly vulnerable to attack. The forest, with its narrow paths and marshy areas, was the complete opposite of the open plains, where Roman legions usually outnumbered their opponents. Arminius knew this terrain to perfection and turned it to his advantage, employing guerrilla tactics that confused and exhausted the Romans. On September 8, AD 9, as rain poured down like arrows from the sky, Arminius and his warriors set their trap. From behind the trees and hills like ghosts, the German fighters emerged, armed with light swords, spears, and arrows, striking at the Roman flanks, and then disappearing back into the forest. The Roman soldiers struggled to form battle lines. In the chaos, they were scattered and disoriented. Caught between the hammer and the anvil, many Romans found themselves unable to defend themselves from the relentless onslaught. For 4 long days, the cruel ambush unfolded with implacable fury. The Germanic tribesmen used their intimate knowledge of the forest, attacking lightning fast and retreating before Varus could ever fight back. As the Roman formations crumbled under the onslaught, it became clear that this was no ordinary skirmish, but a slaughter that was yet to unfold. Realizing that their complete defeat was imminent, Varus and his officers ended their lives to avoid capture by Arminius's men. At the end of this harrowing confrontation, nearly 20,000 Roman soldiers died or were captured. The legions were destroyed. As many as 3 legions were annihilated by the alliance of the tribes, who until then had been underestimated as mere barbarians. The psychological blow to Rome was immense. It was as if a dark cloud descended over the empire. As soon as he heard the news, Emperor Augustus exclaimed, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions." This defeat marked a turning point in Rome's expansionist ambitions. But that was not all. The consequences for those who survived were cruel. Some Romans tried to escape but ended up in the marshes, where they were easily captured or eliminated. Those who fell into the hands of the Germans were no better off. Many were sold as servants or sacrificed to the ancient gods as part of tribal rituals. The attack was so brutal that it was said that those who died on the battlefield were lucky. It was the worst defeat in the history of Rome. The glittering halo of Roman fighting might was irrevocably tarnished. Rome was no longer invincible. Rome, being Rome, could not let this humiliation go unpunished. If there is one thing that the Battle of Teutoburg Forest achieved, it was to prove that Rome was not invincible. This revelation could have inspired other regions in the empire to rise up against Rome, which would have been disastrous for the Pax Romana or the long-held peace in the empire. Therefore, determined to avenge this humiliation, Rome launched a series of retaliatory campaigns led by the able general Germanicus, who was tasked with restoring Roman honor. Germanicus is like a lion seeking revenge and rallying his troops, meanwhile preparing them for a battle that will restore their lost glory. He understood that vengeance is a dish served cold, and planned everything very carefully, realizing that brute force alone would not be enough. Between 14 and 16 AD, Germanicus led several expeditions into Germany aimed at punishing the tribes responsible for the ambush. His campaigns were marked by fierce battles that were not without their challenges. The Germanic tribes had learned from their previous clashes with the Romans and again employed guerrilla tactics, attacking at lightning speed and retreating into the dense forests, which disoriented the ranks and formations of the Roman legions. However, all was not lost for the Roman forces. They achieved some major victories, including the recovery of 2 lost eagle insignia from the defeated legions. But despite these successes, Germanicus suffered significant losses and failed to completely subdue the tribes. The Romans realized that fighting fire with fire often led to more destruction than resolution. By 16 AD, it became clear that annexing Germany was not going to happen, and they withdrew. The Rhine became a natural boundary marking the limits of Roman expansion. The defeat at the Teutoburg Forest fundamentally changed Rome's approach to its northern neighbors. Instead of relying on aggressive expansion, they switched to diplomacy and political maneuvering. "More flies with honey than vinegar" became the new motto of Rome, which began to seek allies rather than rely on conquest. The Rhine remained to serve as the frontier of Rome's expansion for almost 400 years. Undoubtedly, Arminius was an enviable tactician, though whether or not he can be seen as a traitor is debatable. However, there is no disputing that the individuals you will see in the video to the left were some of the greatest national traitors of all time.